Hey, it's Art from my new microphone. In this video, let's discuss the Haas or precedence effect and how we can use it in our music production and mixing. The precedence effect, otherwise known as the Haas effect, is a psychoacoustic effect that has to do with sound localization. It states that if we have a direct sound and then reflections of that sound or delays of that sound that reach our ears within a delay time of under 40 milliseconds, we will hear all of those sounds as a single sound source, with the directionality of that sound source being in the direction of the first perceived sound. Haas, a German-American psychologist, ran tests to find out about this effect back in 1949, naming it at that time the precedence effect. So whether we call it the Haas or the precedence effect, it's still a extremely powerful psychoacoustic phenomenon that allows us to locate sounds even if we are in acoustic environments that have a lot of reflections. While it's generally accepted that delay times under 40 milliseconds will yield this Haas effect, the times could be shorter if we're dealing with high frequency content, especially if there are strong transients such as hand claps, finger snaps, and the like. So slightly delayed sounds are heard as a single sound source, with the perceived direction being that of the first perceived sound that reaches our ears, regardless of the second received sound and its directionality. This holds true even if the second delayed source is louder than the first source, up to about a maximum of 10 dB, depending on the sound. The Haas effect is super useful in nature, and we can also take full advantage of this effect in our mixes to add more dimensionality and width. This is easy to do with stereo delay plugins or with dedicated Haas effect plugins in the mix. Let's hop into Logic Pro and I'll show you how. All right, here we are inside of Logic Pro to discuss the Haas effect and how we can use it in our music productions or mixes. You'll notice here that this session is much less organized than the typical sessions that we will be discussing here on the My New Microphone YouTube channel. This is a song that I'm currently producing rather than a mix that I'm working on. So currently it's a little bit disorganized, but I would go through and bounce all of this out and put it into a nice organized session for mixing. Again, we are just going through the production of this song at the moment. And in this song, I will be using the Haas effect on the big guitar, big saw, and big synth right here. These first two, I will have a look at getting the Haas effect with the stereo delay stock plugin that comes with Logic. And then with this big synth right here, I'm going to use a free third-party plugin by Kilohertz called Haas. I will leave a link to this plugin in the description box down below. And if you are a Logic Pro user, then you can follow along using the stock stereo delay. So to begin with, let's just have a listen to what's going on here. So that is the starting of the song. This is two parts of one song. So we have the guitar and saw right here. So the guitar is mono, and we can use the Haas effect to push this from the center image out to the sides so that it's not competing so much with the bass and with the kick drum and the snare drum. So we can go here and open up our stereo delay plugin. Now, it would be ideal if this particular delay plugin allowed us to go to a delay time of 0 milliseconds. This is not possible in this particular delay, but if you're using another delay that allows you to go to 0, I would suggest starting with that. So what we have here is a delay time of 5 milliseconds right here, and then we have a delay time that is 21 milliseconds more than this delay time on the right. So basically this mono signal is coming into the stereo delay. It is getting delayed on the left channel by 5 milliseconds and on the right channel by 26 milliseconds. You see here that we are not EQing. We have the full range on the left and the right. We have the output mix all the way up on the left and the right so that there's no dry signal coming through. And of course we have 0 feedback. So in other words, we're literally splitting the mono signal into a stereo signal and delaying the left side by 5 and the right side by 26. So let's listen to this in the context of the mix. I'll toggle this stereo delay on and off, and you can hear what the Haas effect sounds like. We'll really hear the mono signal being spread out wide across the stereo spectrum, and I'll mess around with this delay time a little bit. You'll notice that once we pass about 45 seconds, which would be 40 more than the 5 milliseconds here, then the Haas effect will start to break down, and we will begin hearing the left and right as two distinct sound sources. So let's start off in mono, and I will toggle this on and off. I should mention that you should be using a proper pair of headphones or a nice set of stereo monitors to really hear this effect. You won't really get the full effect if you're listening on a mono source like a smartphone or a Bluetooth speaker or something like that. So you can hear, if you have proper stereo monitoring, the effect that the Haas effect has on this mono signal, or we can effectively turn a mono signal into a stereo signal. Moving on, we can do a similar thing with this big saw right here, which is doubling what the guitar is playing. However, if we solo the big saw, this is already a stereo signal. So let's have a quick listen first. So we can hear that there's already a good stereo image there, but let's open up a stereo delay once again. And this time, let's focus the image to the right. So we'll turn the right delay time down just as a sort of balancing act with the big guitar over here. We'll have the 5 milliseconds on the right-hand side, and then we'll adjust this left delay as we see fit. Again, there are no cuts right here in the low cut or high cut. The feedback is down to 0. I'll actually turn the output mix to 100% on the left and right. So let's play this back. I will toggle it on and off. I'll adjust the delay time, and you can hear how the Haas effect can affect an already stereo sound. So you can hear that it kind of pushes the sound a little bit to the right, but also really opens up the stereo image. So from these two examples, we can hear that the Haas effect can turn a mono signal into a nice wide stereo signal, as well as turning a rather narrow stereo signal into a wider stereo signal. So if we were to play both of these back together now, you can hear that it really spreads it out across the stereo spectrum and really allows the center image to be filled up by other important elements in the mix. So let's now listen to this in the greater context of the mix, and I will toggle both of these stereo delays on and off at the same time. So you hear how that really opens up the mix. The center image with the bass, the kick, and the snare can really poke through when we have these other elements spread off to the sides. And then when we bring them back into the center by turning off the delay or the Haas effect, then there's a little bit more mud in the center image and the mix doesn't sound as wide as it should. You'll also notice that I was clipping here on the master bus, but that's because I had this gain plugin on. So let's reset that and move on to the big synth right here, which is affected by the kilohertz Haas effect right here. So this is a pretty simple plugin. You see that we can affect the left channel or the right channel, and we have a delay time. So we can adjust this delay from 0.1 milliseconds all the way up to 100 milliseconds. And remember that it's at about 40 seconds where the Haas effect kind of breaks down and we will begin to hear a sound as being two distinct sources. So as it stands with this plugin right here, I am affecting the delay of the right channel and not affecting the delay of the left channel whatsoever. And if I open up the automation on this track right here, you can see that I have some automation of the pan as well as the Haas delay effect, where I'm adjusting the delay time of the right channel. And if we look closer, you'll see that every time I am adjusting the delay time, I'm adjusting the pan. And this is to try to maintain a center image with this big stereo synth that I'm affecting. And I'll turn off this pan automation later so that you can really hear the dimensional or directional changes that the Haas effect can make to a sound. So let's listen to this in solo first. So that is with the Haas effect at 0.1 milliseconds. Let's play it back and I'll toggle with the Haas effect on and off. So at 0.1 milliseconds, there's really not a whole lot of delay time and you can't really hear the effect. But now let's go to a point where I am modulating the delay time upward, like right here. So you can hear some really interesting stereo effects there as I'm modulating the delay time, which is a really cool effect with the Haas effect that can really add some interest to your mixes and your music production. And going back to the panning, you can see here that anytime, once again, that the delay time is moved on the Haas effect plugin, I'm automating the pan. But if we go here and turn off any pan information, you can hear the directional characteristics that the Haas effect will impart on the sound. So I'll play this part back. There's going to be no panning automation. You'll see that this is going to be +5 the entire time. And listen, especially if you're on good headphones or a good stereo monitoring system, to the directionality characteristics change of this sound. So you heard there that it got pulled to the left side of the stereo spectrum because, again, we are delaying the right, and it's the first sound to hit our ears that gives us the sense of direction of the sound. So because we are leaving the left channel alone and we are increasing the delay of the right channel, it will pull the perceptible direction of that stereo sound to the left, even though we may have equal energy in the left and right channels. So let's listen to that one more time. So you saw there that there's more energy in the right channel, but we hear it as if it's coming from the left channel. So once again, there's a greater volume on the right channel, but because the left channel is hitting our ear first, then we perceive that sound as coming from the left. So to combat that in this particular session, I went ahead and adjusted the pan to try to keep this synth, because it is the important element in this section of the song, as much to the center as I could. You'll notice that this +5 is constant, as if it's a 0 point to keep something in the center, because again, this Haas effect is pulling it to the left somewhat. So let's listen to this in the context of the mix now. So you can use the Haas effect to spread a mono channel into the stereo field to widen a stereo channel. And you can also automate the Haas effect to get really interesting results across the stereo spectrum. If you're finding this video helpful thus far, I would encourage you to hit that like button. It really helps get this content out in front of more people. Thank you. In addition to pulling a sound more to the left or to the right, depending on the settings, the Haas effect has another downside that we should discuss, and that is mono compatibility. So to best illustrate this, let's go back to our big guitar, which is a mono track by default. And let's listen to it one more time in mono and then in stereo with the Haas effect. So it sounds really great and wide in the stereo mix. However, if I was to put a gain plugin right here and collapse this back down to mono, I'm just using the stock gain plugin right here. I'm going to turn mono on. So we have a mono signal going through a stereo delay, getting stereoized, and then I'm collapsing it back into mono afterwards. So if we turn off the stereo delay and listen back, this gain plugin will do nothing to the sound if we toggle it on and off because it's already in mono. However, if we are to listen to this in stereo now and toggle this gain plugin on and off, we'll hear that there is a significant difference between just the mono sound itself and the stereo version of that sound being collapsed back down to mono. So let's have a quick listen. So we need to be aware of how the Haas effect will affect our mono compatibility. Remember that the more things we push out into the stereo field, the more things will be lost when we collapse our mix back down to mono. So perhaps a better way to show this would be to duplicate this channel, to copy this over like so, and to have one version mono and the other version being stereoized and then convert it back down into mono. Let's turn this to no input so I don't see my voice popping up there. So let's toggle back and forth between these two tracks now. So you can hear how the real mono signal sounds a lot stronger, a lot fuller, and this stereoized and then reverted back into mono version of this channel that has been affected by the Haas effect sounds a lot weaker and a lot thinner. So there's a push and pull or pros and cons of using the Haas effect, just as there are with using any stereo effect in the mix. Let's push this a step further and actually bring this gain plugin to the mix bus over here. And what I will do is toggle the entire mix from mono to stereo, and we'll have a listen to how the mono versus the stereo version of this guitar sounds when the entire mix is converted back into mono. So let's start with the mono guitar by muting this stereo version, and we'll have a listen. So you'll hear that the guitar actually jumps forward a little bit in the mix when we are summing to mono because it already is in the center image. Now let's listen to the stereo Haas affected version of that guitar. Now when we collapse to mono, the guitar really disappears and gets thin in the mix. However, it sounds a lot bigger and fuller in the stereo mix. So once again, you'll have to find that out for yourself, whether the Haas effect is beneficial or not to certain tracks within the mix. Always remember to check your mix for mono compatibility if you like your mixes to translate in as many systems as possible, because many systems will play back sound in mono. I actually have a video on mono compatibility. I will leave a link to that in the description box down below for you to check out. If you're interested in learning more about mixing in a practical way, I put together a free mixing guidebook that you can check by clicking the first link in the description box down below. Sign up to my newsletter and I will send that to you right away. This goes through the step-by-step workflow that I use to get consistent mixes regularly to help you make the right decisions at the right times to improve your mixes. So again, first link in the description box down below if you are interested. And if you'd like more free content from me here on the Mining Microphone YouTube channel, I would invite you to hit that subscribe button and to check out another few videos up here in the top left and right corner as per usual. So click on one of those videos and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.